make sure anybody who misses it can catch up. And I'm going to share some slides here. I'm on different split screen here, just because I'm going to show you some safe system assessments live, like real ones, just to show you how they're presented and the like, but I'll do that a little bit later on. Okay, I've marked about half of your assignments, if not more, now, and I'll finish the rest of those off today. I've blocked time out to go through those. Really good analysis of intersections, and yeah, just still a few people just not quite clear on that exposure versus likelihood versus severity on a few things. I think what I'm going to go through in this one is going to help you out a lot. Yeah, there's a little bit of reading as well that you can do to catch up there. But like usual, pop your questions into the chat. And this is a pretty important session in terms of your ability to actually do a safe system assessment, the sort of mechanics of it, the process of it, and those sorts of things. The ability to ensure that your recommendations are aligning with safe system principles and are right and are best road safety practice and all that. That's kind of what we've covered to date. But here we go into the mechanics of how do you do a safe system assessment? And we are recording. So yeah, I'm going to point you at the guidelines, the different guidelines available to you. We're going to go into the safe system assessment matrix. The matrix, that's the meat of a safe system assessment. How to write up the report, and then how to categorize treatments into primary or supporting. That's something we haven't done a lot of discussion about. That's some terminology you're going to need to get your head around as you go. So we've covered the safe system pretty well. We've established this idea that humans make mistakes, and we're going to need to cater for those within our transport system, and we're going to need to manage energy. And so we're honing in on the severity in a safe system assessment, but also the likelihood, of course. We want to stop crashes happening in the first place, but we just acknowledge that we won't be able to eliminate those because of humans, the mistakes. And so how do we manage those? We've got that shared responsibility. We've got those different elements of the system we can, the levers we can pull. And we have that aspiration of zero death and serious injury. It sort of underpins the safe system. So I think we've covered all of this really well. I think we're in a good spot there. And then we started talking exposure, likelihood, and severity. And we really started talking a lot about that, and that's good. So exposure, likelihood, and severity, you've done a good assignment on that, and you've started your shaping and clarifying your thinking around those three elements. And we've had a good bit of discussion about the kinetic energy thresholds of the human body in different crash types and what forces we can handle. And we draw that line around that 10%, and we say somewhere around the 70 kilometers per hour for head-on, 50 kilometers per hour for side impact, 30 kilometers per hour for pedestrian strikes. And we want to be, within those to get really low scores in our safe system assessment. And low scores are good in a safe system assessment. It's like low risk. And there's, lots more information for you there on speeds and angles and different crash types and sort of generally what are the forces. More of that. So how do we actually do a safe system assessment? Before I do that, this is a quiz. This is less of a quiz and more of a gauging of where people are at in terms of safe system assessment knowledge. Should have popped up on your screen, but it's really just a question is, what has been your involvement with safe system assessments? Nothing, safe system what now? I've heard the term, but I don't know much more. I've had one done on one of my projects. I've done one. I live, breathe, and eat safe system assessments. Hoping somebody jumps onto that one, okay, getting lots of good answers in there. That's excellent. Give it 5 more seconds. Okay, let's share the results and have a look. So we've got most people in the category, I've heard the term, and that's good. I mean, there's a lot of chatter in the industry about this idea of a safe system assessment. So a lot of people hearing the term but not knowing too much more, and that's fine. Some people have had them done on their projects. That's good. We've got 3 people who have done one or been involved in teams. That's excellent. I wish we could find out who our person is that lives, breathes, and eats safe system assessments. That's exciting. And somebody is back in the other camp of safe system what now? But good, that helps me just, calibrate things. I'm going to go through, the basics and the mechanics of it all. So thank you for your input there. Right. The first thing you need to know is that there is an Austroads Safe System Assessment Framework document. This is it here, and it was released in late 2016. I was on the working group for this this production of this document. I wasn't one of the authors of it, but we'd been doing things before that. Well, I'd certainly been doing things before that. We called them safe system audits back before this was released. And the decision within that project was not to call them safe system audits because they didn't want confusion with a road safety audit. So they called them safe system assessments as a different entity. So, but this document does lay out the process at a high level of how to do a safe system assessment and what's in there. It goes through understanding the objectives of a project, the context of the project, the matrix, which I'm going to take you through in lots of detail, and then any treatments that you suggest, recommend. And the one thing that is important, I suppose, in there, scale and depth. The safe system assessment framework is very, very versatile in that sense. So you can do something that is relatively quick, that is a light assessment, right? You can do something that is extremely detailed and thorough and really takes many, many months to do as an assessment. You can also do assessments of very small things like a little splitter island or, signage upgrades or these sorts of things. Or you can do big stuff. You could do whole programs, like road safety infrastructure programs or congestion easing programs. Or you could do like remote communities, mine sites, so you're taking into account a whole lot of different aspects. So it's very, very versatile in an assessment methodology. And to a sense, it is a risk assessment methodology with a slightly different lens on it. Now, Austroads released that document, but then some jurisdictions who picked it up early, Victoria and South Australia, and were doing lots of assessments, identified some things that weren't well clarified and maybe weren't quite hitting the mark in the actual application of it. The Austroads document was really before many of these had been done. And so Victoria produced their own safe system assessment guidelines, which sort of sit under the Austroads guidelines to clarify a few things, more details. Here's how we want reports written and those sorts of things. And then the old DIPTI, but now I think they're called DIT, produced a set of guidelines as well. You'll find that these two documents are very much the same, apart from the front cover and a few specific words. But yes, it's the same sort of process, which is more like sort of your after the industry's been using it for a while guidelines. So I've provided all of those documents in Moodle on your memory stick, so you can flick through those, get some more details, understand a bit more about these things. But what I'm going to do is jump all the way to the end, and then we're going to build our way back up to here. Okay, because this is like one of the key outputs of a safe system assessment. Okay, it's this graph that shows us where things align well with safe system principles or don't align well with safe system principles. And the key thing is that the lower the score, the better the alignment with safe system principles. So you'll see down here as an output, we've got run-off road, head-on, intersection, other, pedestrian, cyclist, motorcyclist. They're the crash types. Okay. And then we've got safe system alignment score on the y-axis. Okay. And the lower the bar here, in the bar graph, is the lower that is, the better the alignment with safe system principles. And what you can see here is we've got these red ones, right? The red is the existing conditions. So we don't need to know what this one is, but it's an intersection somewhere, obviously. And the red is what it's currently, what it currently is. And it's it'll be a passively controlled intersection. So a give way sign or something like that. And they appear to have three designs here. They've got a design for a roundabout, and they've got a design for a modified T signalized intersection and a conventional T signalized intersection. And then somebody's analyzed those designs, done the process that I'm going to show you through, scored everything, and now are able to produce these scores, which is saying that, for run-off road crashes, it appears the roundabout actually comes out better, so that's interesting. Roundabout's better for head-on, roundabout's better for the intersection crash score, roundabout's better for, the signalized versions seem to be better for other crashes, and we'd get the detail of what are these other crashes we're talking about. Pedestrians faring about the same for everybody. Again, that'll be contextualized. How is that the roundabout's better for pedestrians? They can be, certainly in different circumstances. Cyclists actually fare worse with that. So that's interesting. And then motorcyclists seem to get the same across the board. But you can immediately see how we're starting to identify by different crash type, road user, where we're getting our benefits and non-benefits. So that's sort of the end. That's what we're trying to get to a degree. But let's jump back and let's look at, how do we start the safe system assessment? Well, the first thing you do in a proper safe system assessment is to understand the context of the project that you're assessing. So they've got maybe a design, they've got an idea, they've got some sketches, maybe a new alignment of a road, maybe some upgrade plans or whatever it is. And then you as the assessor, you work with that project team to understand the context of it. Yeah. What's the reason for this project? What's the function of the road? What speed environments are you aiming at? If you're committed to speed limits at this stage? What are any road users present? What's the land use? What's the growth patterns? Are you changing anything? Is anything going to change into the future? What are your vehicle compositions? What are your design vehicles? So all of that sort of stuff, gather your intel. Now, why are you doing this? Some of them are feeding into the actual assessment and the scoring, but some of them are just helping you to make helpful recommendations to that project team in the future. Now, what I tend to do, just this is a practical little bit, is that I get these questions in a Word document, and I sort of immediately with my assessment team will send that to the project team and say, hey, can you fill out as much of this as you can with existing info, or send us reports and things that can help us understand this. So it's immediately sort of, getting that information in. Sometimes then we have a workshop where we delve into some of these in more details, ask lots of questions. But it's all trying to get yourself up to speed on their project. And then you start to review and you get things going, and you start to produce a safe system assessment matrix on the existing conditions. So you put all their designs and their plans aside. You just go, right, they're changing things from here to here. Now let's go and assess that existing bit of road. So you looked at an intersection in your assignment 2, the existing intersection, and you did some assessment on it. You're going to do the same with whatever area the project is being proposed for. And you get this matrix out. And the matrix is the meat of a safe system assessment. And you'll see that the matrix has 3 rows. And I hope it's not a surprise to anybody here, but the 3 rows are exposure, likelihood, and severity. Good, okay. So we've got exposure, likelihood. Across the top here, we have those crashes. Run-off road, head-on, intersection, and pedestrian, cyclists, and motorcyclists crashes. So this is these are the crash types that present all the death and serious injury on the road network. The other is anything that's sort of been missed in that. And that could be sideswipe crashes, could be crashes with animals, it could be railway level crossing crashes, it could be crashes with rear end crashes at a mid-block location. So if it's a rear end that's resulted from intersection queuing, that actually fits into our intersection crashes. But if it's rear end, mid-block, maybe a pedestrian operated signal or school crossing, and you're worried about rear end somehow, we would categorize that maybe as an other. A really important thing here to remember is that it is the user that is injured is that crash type, injured or killed in your crash that you're thinking about. So if your crash that you've visualized here is a person at an intersection in their car turning and striking a pedestrian, right? That's actually a pedestrian crash. That's where you start to account for that in the pedestrian crash, because it's the pedestrian that's going to be injured or killed. Even though it happened at an intersection, it's coded as a pedestrian crash. Now, those of you who have been in the sort of road safety engineering space, you probably used DCA code, so definition for classifying accidents. I don't use the term accident anymore, but back in the day when they did that, so definition for classifying accidents, or RUM codes, road user movement codes, or whatever, and you'll know then that when you code a crash, a pedestrian crash is coded as a pedestrian crash. It doesn't matter whether it happened at the intersection or at a mid-block location, it's coded as a pedestrian crash. And cyclists and motorcycles. So that's kind of the way you need to think about it when you're trying to attribute that. So heavy vehicles are a really interesting one. So most of the time, you categorize heavy vehicles with other passenger vehicles, and you just use them as an indicator of severity down here. We'll get to this in a second. But occasionally you might factor them into likelihood. If you've got swept path issues, then your design's not catering for the large vehicles or the like. And very rarely you might give it its own category of other, but most of the time everybody just says, yep, we're lumping them in with passenger vehicles crashes because they fit into these categories. I'm just going to build this up piece by piece, and you know, you'll be a little bit confused at the moment, but that's okay. And the reason we get you to do an exercise is because there's nothing better to learn a process than to do the process. And you'll get out there and you'll do it. You'll find bits and pieces and you'll get this clear in your mind. Okay, so we've got the crash types. We've got the exposure, likelihood, and severity. And we need to now start to populate each of these cells of this matrix with information. And eventually a score. And the score is between 0 and 4. I'm going to clear all the ink off this. So we're aiming to put a score between 0 and 4 in each one of these cells of the matrix. The thing is, though, that you don't just put a number. You need to justify your number with information. So you do a little assessment of each of these cells. Now, exposure is quite easy to a degree because it is just the AADT, at least for cars and trucks. When you're into pedestrians and the AADT, so AADT, sorry, is annual average daily traffic for those who aren't familiar with that term. That's how many vehicles are going through that area per day on average. Pedestrians, you're trying to get the pedestrian numbers, cyclist numbers, and motorcycle numbers. So what tends to happen, or what I find often, is that they come along with their design. Maybe they're doing a duplication of a road or something like that. You say, what's your AADT? And they say, yep, it's 15,000 vehicles a day or 25,000 vehicles a day, whatever it is. You know, they've got a good indication of that now, and they've probably got traffic modeling for the next, you know, in 5 scenarios or something, a year 1, a year 5, a 10, and a 20 year, and a 50 year or something like that. You know, it's incredible how, you know, well that's usually done. And that's going to give us great intel for these. And then you say, what's your pedestrian counts? They say, oh, we don't have any of those. And so that's okay though. I mean, it's probably an indication of maybe what you count is what you value. But anyway, that's a different thing to discuss. But we then, as assessors, just need to use some judgment. Make predictions. Is it super high pedestrians or absolutely no pedestrians? Or cyclists, probably the same. You may not get numbers. Motorcyclists, again, sometimes you get counts on motorcyclists. Sometimes it's okay to just use about 1 to 2% of AADT. So what you do is you are now trying to put a score here. And you might write in here, you know, you're putting some text in, you know, the traffic volume is, so let's say it's 9,000 is the AADT. So then what you do is you go to a scoring reference sheet. You don't actually put the score of 9, the score is not 9,000. You go to a scoring reference sheet. Now this is straight out of the Austroads document. It's been repeated in the Victorian and the South Australian guidance, but it's there. This is what everybody's using. And it actually, so it has a score, and then it's got exposure, likelihood, and severity. So it's got 0, a 1, 2, 3, and a 4. And it shows you how you get to that. So let's have a look at a 2. And for road user exposure, the volume of vehicles that might be involved in a particular crash type, so that particular column in the matrix, is moderate. Therefore, exposure is moderate. For runoff road, head-on, and other crash types, AADT is between 1,000 and 5,000. There we go. We've got some clear, clean numbers. For cyclists, pedestrians, and motorcyclists, volumes are between 10 and 50 units a day crossing or along through that area. Okay, let's go up and see what a 3 is. Okay, so a 3 would be AADT between 5,000 and 10,000, or between 50 and 100 pedestrians or cyclists or motorcyclists. A 4 is greater than 10,000 or greater than 100 units a day. Interesting. Okay, good. Now we're getting a feel for, okay, we've got a scoring reference sheet. Let's go back here. Less than 1,000 for 1 and less than 10. And a 0 is no. So there is no intersection. So there's no exposure from that perspective, or there are no pedestrians or no cyclists or no motorcyclists. Now, like for, say, a motorway or something like that, I would not put a 0 for pedestrians. Okay, and that's just because I know from enough motorway crash analysis that there is quite a bit of pedestrian crash activity, and you can talk to the team, your project team about this, and they'll give you intel on it. But you do see a lot of pedestrians. They're usually broken down vehicles, or they're actually more common seems to be the 2 a.m. taxi that pulls over and either, I don't know, kicks people out, or people get out to go to the toilet or vomit or whatever they're doing. So they seem to be sort of the protection. But you see what I'm saying? Like in theory, you'd like to say 0 for pedestrians, but because it's no pedestrians are allowed on there. But in the practical, once you understand the context and what's happening and those sorts of things, you'll find that you put a low score. You'd put that sort of score of a 1 in there. But that being said, like cyclists, I would put in the 0 for motorway, because the reason for that one is that, yeah, okay, we might get that occasional Dutch backpacker who, lands at the airport and, puts their bike together and puts their backpack on and rides down the motorway. But it's so rare an activity that I'm okay to put a 0, but then I will deal with that. I'll deal with that activity within the safe system assessment, but just not within the matrix, because it's going to distort the numbers too much. So you do need a little bit of judgment on this stuff, but yeah, anyway, so that's good. So what did we say? We said 9,000 AADT. So we're going to go here and we're going to say, well, 9,000 is between 5,000 and 10,000. So I'm going to take the 3 here, and I just go back and I go 3. Great. Now we've got a score for runoff road for exposure. Because there's that many vehicles going through, that many people are exposed, the vehicles are exposed to runoff road crashes, and we've used the reference sheet and we've got a score. We actually then are easily able to then go, that's a 3 as well. When you get to intersections, though, it becomes a little more challenging because you're getting an extra stream of traffic, aren't you? You've got an extra stream of traffic coming. They could be crossing that road, but then we've got this extra bit. Now, there was a lot of debate in industry. Do we call that, what do we do? Now we've got 2 numbers. Do we add the numbers? Do we just use the higher number? Do we just use the lower number? Do we multiply the 2 numbers? There's still quite a bit of debate out of this, but in order to get more uniformity across this, we've put an interim sort of way of doing things, which we got agreement from the Department of Transport in Victoria to run down this line, and everybody seems to be okay with it now. I love Austrage to do more in-depth work to decide whether this is right. But what we're doing is we're just adding up the main line volume and the intersecting road volume. So it's just an addition of the two to get an AADT. And so we've got 9,000 on the main road. Let's say we've got 2,000 on the side road. What we're going to do then is say that that's 11,000 AADT. And we go, well, 11,000 is greater than 10,000. So we're going to give it a 4. So this one may then be a 4. Other, we decide, okay, well, other, we're going to think about sideswipe crashes or something like that. Maybe we've got sideswipes and we've got, we're worried maybe we've had crashes with animals. Well, we're going to give that a 3 as well, because it's the number of vehicles that are exposed to that type of crash. And that's 9,000. Because you are doing it on the main route. You're not delving down each of your side roads. You're just doing it on the main drag. If you want to delve down a side road, right, that's a separate matrix. You just do a whole different matrix for that. Because again, you're going to cloud the sort of clarity of accounting of numbers here if you start to pack too much of that side road activity and the side road risks into the higher number areas. Anyway, so then you go to your pedestrian numbers, right? And so you go, you talk to the project team. What are we talking about for number of, sorry, just give me a second here. So what are we going for number of pedestrians? It'll be like, yeah, we're going to say, okay, like for this area, we're going to say, oh, we reckon there's about 20 pedestrians a day because there's a bus that stops there, they cross the road. It's about that many. And there's an occasional person walking their dog across the road, and occasional jogger. So we're going to go with 20. We go, right, okay, that's good. What does our scoring reference sheet say? Where do we find 20? Well, 20 is between 10 and 50 there. So we're going to give it a 2. Go back here. Go, great. You can have a 2 here. Cyclists, they go, oh, well, no, there's hardly any cyclists. You always never see a bike there, but they use it as a training route on the Saturday morning. And I'm not going to give it then the sort of the 20 because it's only one point in time. I'm going to account for that a little bit down in other parts of my assessment, and I'm going to give it I'm going to say, well, we've got sort of, I'm going to go with less than 10 cyclists a day, but I'm not quite comfortable to go to 0. So we go to our sheet, we go, okay, less than 10. We're going to give it a 1 for cyclists. And motorcyclists, so I'm going to say they're 1%. So we're going to go 90 of them per day. Because we've got 9,000 vehicles. And where does that fit? 90. Oh, it's right. Yep. Okay, that's also a 3 then. That's fine. Let's go back here. 3 for most. Right. And we've got scores now for our exposure. That's good. Right. We've got to start. Now, the exposure is fairly clean cut and fairly easy. I'm just going to check how we're going with questions here. So we've got a comment in here about cyclists being allowed on motorways in some areas. Okay, that's good to know. Yep, you've got to take that into account. So a lot of jurisdictions ban cyclists on motorways, and apparently some don't. Okay, so we've got another good question there about, like, are we doing one matrix for the whole road, or are we doing multiple matrices? That's a complicated question, and I have a whole fact sheet dedicated to exactly that. The quick answer is you break it up into homogeneous sections, and you do a matrix for each homogeneous section, be that intersections of exactly the same form or lengths of road that don't have fundamental changes in their geometry, lane characteristics, speed, and those sorts of things. So you will, if you have a long length of road, you'll most likely have quite a few matrices. we did the safe system assessment for Northeast Link in Victoria, in Melbourne, the big new, whatever it is, $15 billion project that they're planning out there. And we had 62 matrices, right? But that's a massive, it's just an insanely big project, right? Most of the time, if you're just doing an intersection, it'd be one matrix. Well, sorry, it'll end up being two, because you'll have existing conditions and your design. Or if maybe they've got multiple options, you'll do a matrix for each option. If you've got a length of road, it's got a few intersections, maybe you do a couple of matrices. I'll show you some actual live examples of this shortly. Right, what do we got here? Other questions. Do you take average volume on main route if large turns at side roads? Yeah, you need to use a little bit of judgment on that. But remember, it's really, if you had a section of road, then there's an intersection which takes a heap of the traffic and your assessment continues on down the road, you'd actually probably do two matrices, because you've got a fundamental change there. So you do one with the higher volume, then you do another matrix with the lower volume section, because you've had that fundamental change. And you don't want to be accounting for risk, essentially, where it changes significantly in your risk profile. A good question. Thank you. Keep your questions coming in. Some of these I'm going to cover a bit more, and you'll see in some live examples, which will help you out. But all right, let's go back to our matrix. We've got now scores for exposure. Now we're into likelihood. All right. Now the exposure cells in a safe system assessment matrix are usually fairly concise. They got a little bit of commentary around what your traffic volumes are, what your PED volumes are, and then they give the score. The likelihood ones are more detailed, because what you have to do is look at your existing intersection and say, what are the characteristics of the infrastructure here and the operation that are influencing the score I want to put in here? We go to our scoring reference sheet again here. We see that the likelihood one, look at this, crash likelihood and our scores. For a 2, it is unlikely that a given crash type will occur. Well, that's not much information, is it? Yes. Okay, haven't helped us out a lot here. Let's go to a 3. It is likely that a given crash type will occur. That's, again, not helping us a huge amount. Number 4. The likelihood of individual road user errors leading to a crash are high given the infrastructure in place, e.g. high approach speeds to a sharp curve, priority movement control, filtering across several lanes of traffic, high speeds. Okay, we get a little bit more out of a 4. That's nice. Let's go back. A 1, highly unlikely. That's not helping. A 0, there's only minimal chance of a crash occurring given the individual road infrastructure in place. Only extreme driver behavior, substantial vehicle failure could lead to a crash. This may mean, for example, 2 streams do not cross, pedestrians do not cross the road. Now some of that is actually in practical senses, and the Victorian and South Australian guidelines factor more of it into there. But essentially what you're trying to do here, the same way you would with a risk assessment, is to use your expert judgment, take all of the clues of what you can see out there on the road, what you know about the area, and say, what is the likelihood of crashes relative to the rest of the network? And relative to the rest of the network is important. And again, we've given you a whole fact sheet on this, because it's people getting their head around it is hard. Because if you take that on face value, really everything is going to come down to highly unlikely, because crashes are highly unlikely at individual locations until you do it in a relative sense, relative to other areas. So what you're really doing is looking relatively at this area and saying, well, the characteristics here of high speed, the adverse crossfall, curve, or maybe turning turning across multiple lanes of traffic, so making hard decisions there, and those sorts of things are factoring into the scoring. And so what you actually do then in the safe system assessment is start to jot down a whole lot of dot points of specific things that influence how you're going to get to this likelihood score. And you put in there all the things that make you want to make the score go up and all the things that make you want to make the score go down. So maybe for runoff, and I should say in this slide, I've put just a few of the characteristics that would be put into these cells, but not all of them. There's, etc. at the bottom, because there's lots and lots of other stuff. But you'd be looking here at intersections. What's the type of control, the speed, what's the specifics of the design, visibility, conflict points, like all of these different features. And you might say, really great sight distance to the intersection. That makes you want your score to go down. It's less likely to crash. With a good sight, you can see this intersection coming. It's really good. The line marking is really good. The signs are really good. These are all things wanting to bring the score down. You might then say, but the speed is quite high. And the control is only a give way, less. So you're starting to say, oh, these make me want to go up. These make me want to go down. And we finally find where we're happy with relative to the rest of the network. And you make a judgment call. And it is subjective. Okay, so there is a degree of subjectivity to this because it's your judgment as a team. Now, we do these usually in teams. So you'll get somebody go, oh, I think it should be a 2. Oh, I think it should be a 3. And then you challenge and, oh, no, here's why. And that's okay. That's good debate. That's healthy. That's getting us into a nice spot. But anyway, you go through that. You look back here at your scoring reference sheet and you end up deciding that I want to go with maybe, I actually think everything's really good here. I'm really happy with everything. It's all good except for these minor little bits and pieces. So I'm going to go with a 1 for runoff road. It's got sealed shoulders. It's got great edge line. It's got audio tactile edge line. It's got great guideposts, great cams and great delineation. And the surface is excellent, and there's a really good super elevation around curves. Everything's making me happy, but I'm still understanding that people are going to fall asleep. People are going to be distracted. They're going to be using their phone. They're going to be, humans will be humans. So I can't say that there will absolutely be no runoff road crashes. And maybe head on, I'm in the same. It's got a wide center line. It's got audio tactile. It's all really looking good. So I'll put a 1 there. Intersections, though, I'm not as happy with. So I'm going to put a 2 there. I'm going to put a 2. Pedestrians, just like, there's no pedestrian crossings. There's no refuge islands. In fact, that the place where most of the pedestrians seem to be crossing, hidden by that bush. And there's no lighting, and I don't like this and that. Okay, let me go a 4. That's the worst. Like, there's actual fundamental characteristics that are really actually increasing the chance that pedestrians are going to be hit here. It's dark. There's sight distance impediments. They're crossing multiple lanes of traffic. It's a long distance to travel. It's right over a crest. Whatever these sorts of factors are. And then cyclists, you go, well, there's no cycle lane, there's no off-road facilities, and all of these things, you might go a 4 there as well. And motorcyclists, you sort of tend to be a little bit worse than any of your highest score in terms of what vehicles are, because motorcyclists are smaller, harder to see, but they're still subject to those same sorts of risk characteristics, so maybe put a 3 for them. But you're not just going to jot a number down the way I'm doing here. You're going to justify that with lots of dot points of how you arrived there. Then you're going to go through and do the same for severity. But severity is one where it's kind of a combination of subjectivity with science and documented kinetic energies. Because this is where we were referring back to those scoring sheets that we provided in module 1. You remember that colored one that I had a 0, a 1, a 2, and a 3, and a 4? So you've got some intel there. You know the speeds that are likely to cause death and high-level serious injury. So you're gathering intel. And your scoring reference sheets here are saying, like, maybe for a 2, should a crash occur, it is unlikely that it will result in fatality or serious injury to any road users involved. Kinetic energies are moderate, and the majority of the time are effectively dissipated before reaching the road user. So that last little bit basically means, like a barrier. It'll dissipate the energy before it actually hits the road user, or it's got cushioning or some sort of buffer, or the vehicle is slowed down those kinetic energies. So unlikely that it'll result in death or serious injury. Likely, highly likely. I think you're getting the picture here. Highly unlikely. Then a 0 would be, should a crash occur, there is only minimal chance to result in a fatality or a serious injury to the road users involved. This will mean the kinetic energies are low, likely not to cause fatal or serious injuries, or that they're very well dissipated before they reach the road user. So, very flexible barrier systems, or very low speed environments or the like. So then you go back and you go, okay, now let's jot down lots of points. Well, you go, well, it's there are no barriers. There are trees next to the next to the road. Now, the presence of them in the offset has been accounted for in likelihood, but the fact that they're trees, bigger than 100, 100 mil, or deemed non-frangible, so deemed a point source hazard, and that's going to increase the severity, the speed, the whether there's no barriers there and those sorts of things. So maybe we're going to go at 3 on that. And head on, now we're going, oh, okay, well, it's got a high percentage of heavy vehicles, so there's more of a chance that this crash is going to be highly severe if that happens. And we've got this high speed, and we're factoring in here also a little bit of the knowledge of a runoff road crash and the speeds that we can handle. So maybe this would actually, might be higher depending on the scenario. Head on, we know we can do that a bit faster. So maybe, but we've got lots more heavy vehicles. So maybe we're also going to go a 3 on balance for that one. And intersections, you're looking at your speeds and your vehicles and your angles and how they're configured and what the choice is. So maybe we're going to go a 4 there. And others, we know side swipe impacts are quite friendly, and rear ends are up there. Maybe we're going a 2 on that. Pedestrians, maybe we go a 4 because they're highly vulnerable, highly likely to be killed, a 4, and motorcyclists a 4. So now you can see you've sort of populated with numbers. I rushed through it there. You're going to have to justify it with lots of information. But then what you do is you multiply your exposure by your likelihood by your severity, right? So we do 3 by 1 is 3, by 3 is 9. And hey presto, we've got our runoff road score. We were hoping for 0 because that would be perfect alignment with safe system principles, but we've got a 9. We could have got a 64. That would have been the worst alignment with safe system principles. So we got 9 there, and what you got? 16, 32. 32 there. And so you're immediately starting to see how you can identify the crash types that are presenting you the most risk. So as I said, it's a risk assessment model methodology with a slight tweak. And then what you do is, you fill out all these numbers and then you add them. So you add up your scores along the bottom. And you get a final score out of 448. A score of 0 would be perfect alignment with safe system principles. A score of 448 would be the worst alignment with safe system principles. And the reality is you get it somewhere in between. And that's why I talk about alignment with safe system principles. I've done hundreds of these now, and no project has ever got a 0 and no project has ever got a 448. It's always somewhere in between. But that's okay. At least we're starting to get a score, and we're starting to pinpoint areas that are presenting worse alignment with safe system principles. Okay, I'm going to pause there and see if anybody's got any questions on this, and then I'll run you through a sort of live example. Actually, I think I'll probably jump out and show you a real one that I was just having a look at, because I think it's actually quite a nice way to see how this is presented. So anybody got any particular questions at this stage? Bearing in mind that you haven't seen a lot of this and you haven't had a go at it. Okay, here we go. What do we got here? What's the best score you've seen, and what did the intersection look like? The best score I've seen was it was in the teens. I can't remember exactly what it was, like 13 or 15 or something like that. And it was a shared path facility, basically connecting railway stations, basically going through local streets, and it was crossing local roads, but with raised crossings and the like. So volumes were low on a lot of it. Speeds were low, and there was little bits and pieces that were just presenting low risk. So they were raised facilities and local areas. So that's yeah. I'll show you now just an example. How am I going to do this? Yeah, here we go. Here's one that I was just having a look at that we would do. And I think it's a nice one to show you what sort of your product output is looking like. So we've got two design options that they're looking at. And you'll see here that they've gone existing conditions, 192.5. I'll get on to 0.5s and the like shortly. Not a fan of using a decimal place. And the guidelines tell you, if you absolutely must, you can go to a 0.5, but that's it. And the reason for that is, and I'll give you a little bit of a story on that one. You know, working group, developing this, coming up with it. And when I told you we used to do back in the day, safe system audits, and we didn't actually put scores to it. We had a different way of presenting all of this. The Austroads project put forward this idea of scores, and you know, we're in the working group, and I'm there going, oh my God, if we put scores to this and we give this to technical people, the engineers and the technical people that are our industry, they're going to run this off a cliff in terms of scoring. They'll go to like, and we did see that in the initial things where people wanted, you know, had 3 decimal places to a score, and we had these, you know, the reality was though, and you've just seen me take you through the matrix, there is subjectivity to it, there's judgment packed into that, and to be that precise is just laughable, right? So there is actual advantage also to having these bands. And we see this in road safety all the time play out, where people look at an intersection, it's got inherent speed issues and all of these, and they tweak around with the signs, right? And then they say, we've made it safe. And the thing is that they've tweaked the likelihood score a bit. right? And it's important that we get that right, but they've tweaked the likelihood score a bit. It actually plays out a lot of the time in a safe system assessment that that's not even enough to change the number from like a 4 down to a 3. Or maybe it might, it might go like a 0.1 that you want to take off. You go, well, it's not even enough to give me a half. And that's kind of a good thing to show them. You go, yes, get that right. That's important. But don't pretend we've all of a sudden made this intersection safe as a result. Anyway, this one's gone to a 0.5 that I'm reviewing, having a look at the moment. That's usually because the team here couldn't decide between a 2 and a 3. And they compromised on a 2.5. You can see there that they've got one's a bike lane one way and a bike lane there. They've got 2 design options. And there we go. They've presented a little summary sheet, and this is nice to see. And I can immediately see existing conditions is that, design option 1's that, design option 2's that. I go, right, everything they're doing there improves alignment with safe system principles, both their design options, making things better. Down from that 192 down to that. And I go immediately, design option 1's slightly better, alignment with safe system principles. And I can see where that's sort of coming from. Head on seems to be a good one there, intersection, other. Cyclists slightly not getting as much benefit, so we might be something we want to look at. Then they've got some recommendations. This is the exact summary. But let's go down a little bit now, and we'll have a look here. So there's a bit of background, what's the project, what were some of the workshops that happened. There we go. What's the context of the project? That's good. So look, those are those prompt questions that I showed you through at the start. So they filled out information about that. There's the scoring reference sheet straight out of Austroads. That's the one I just took you through, 0s, 1s, 2s, 3s. But here we go. Now we've got what I'm looking for. Existing conditions matrix. Okay. Now you see here that they've combined all of that because they've just said basically it's all the same across here. We've got traffic volume and we've got that, and it comes across as a 3 across the board for those. Intersection could have changed if it had gone up enough on some side roads, but it's kept it a 3. Pedestrians 4, cyclists 4, motorcyclists at a 3 as well, and they've said how they've arrived at that. Okay, now likelihood. You'll see there that here we've got lots of detail about how they've arrived at this likelihood score in terms of things that increase the likelihood and things that decrease the likelihood. You see lots of dot points in there, isn't it? Lots of intel. So it's a bit like your road safety audit. You're analyzing, this bit and that bit, and then, there's a sight distance issue here, and this one, and the legs and the angles that they come in on, and these sorts of things. So putting down lots of detail about how we've arrived at this, and then they put scores in here at 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 3. And then severity, same thing. What's increasing the severity? ... What's decreasing the severity? ... These bits and pieces. And then they've got, there's your 0.5, 2.5, 2, 3, 2.5, 4, 4, 4. And we've got then multiply and then add, end score. Then what they've done is they copy this existing matrix. So you select your whole table, Control C, and then Control V, and you paste it down here. And you say, right, let's pick up design 1. So their first design, you have a look at the design and you say, okay, what's changing from the existing conditions? Okay, they're adding this and they're removing that, and they're changing this alignment, and they're adding drainage facilities here. And then what does that impact on? And then anything that's new, you put in a different color. In red seems to be a bit of a convention. New things added. And anything that gets removed gets crossed out. And so we're building this story of, okay, your project is changing the existing conditions with this and adding this. And the adding could be things that increase the score, or could be things that decrease the score. And so we're seeing, a new thing comes along. And then you'll see that each time they do this, if there's enough to warrant a change in the score, they've changed the score. And so as somebody receiving this report, you can see exactly where things have changed, which bits are getting better, which bits are getting worse. And that's how they then arrive at their new score. And then you've got your next design option. So again, they've taken the existing conditions matrix, they've pasted that, then they've altered it, and they've used a different color here to show this is a different option we're assessing. Cross this bit out. Okay, they've removed that intersection, or that thing that I didn't like, that's gone now in the new one, but they've replaced it with this. You go through and you get all this intel, and you get a new score there. And then you can get your overarching summary of results. You get your details of where that's come from and how it's been presented. There are then these general questions, which I'm going to get to, but they're trying to cover off other elements of the SAFE system. And you remember I said that Dutch backpacker? Well, this is where we're going to write commentary around that. Or, there's a pub there, and, every once a month they have some party that spills out onto the street, or this is the motorcycle route where they go for the Phillip Island Grand Prix, and they all come through here on this weekend. And we just got to factor that in. It's these anomalies, these road user things, or the like, that you don't want to cloud your overall scores for this, but you really want to acknowledge that as a particular thing. And I'll take you through those questions shortly. And then this bit's really important. Recommendations, or we call them usually like things for the project to consider. In fact, the table, you'll see that's ideas for consideration. Recommendations seen as a bit too, well, no, they are recommendations, but they're not mandatories, if that makes sense. I mean, it's the project. It's their project, and this is just providing some advice. Consider reducing the speed limit along the route to 30 kilometers an hour. Consider underpasses. That, some of these things they might go, we can't do underpasses. Like, we're over budget already. Are you insane? But that's the project to say that. The assessor is just saying, this is how you could get great alignment with safe system principles. Now, that being said, in the development of the context and understanding the project and why they're doing things and what they're trying to achieve and all of that, you can calibrate a little bit here. Now, this one, I know a bit about it. Like, at these early stages, everything can be on the table, and they're thinking about it. How can we do this? What can we do? Maybe these sorts of things. But anyway, I opt on, put it in there, let the project team respond as to why it can't be done, because that can get us high alignment with safe system principles. And then you've got primary treatments and you've got supporting treatments. And I'll take you through what the difference is. Some sort of conclusion. So I think that's quite there's a few little things I see in there that I'd like to tweak a little bit. But I think they've done a pretty good job in that assessment. Let's see if we've got any more questions at this stage. No. So I think one-way street, chance of head-on 0. Well, it depends. Probably yes, you could put a 0 for head-on a one-way street. But if there's, if you're worried a little bit about one-way, wrong-way driving, like people could be confused and drive up the wrong way, you'd want to factor that thought in and make sure you're pretty comfortable that that's very, very, minuscule risk. But yeah, that's a possibility of getting a 0. And that's a really sort of, I suppose, a good point, because let's go back to our slides here. We go back to the matrix. If you were to put a 0 in any cell of the matrix, you know what happens when you multiply by 0, you get 0. And so if you can put a 0 in head-on, because you say there's no exposure to head-on, it doesn't matter what your likelihood is or your severity is, because there is nobody exposed to head-on crashes. Thus, your score is 0 for that. Likewise, if you can, hand on heart, say, even with humans and all their failures, the likelihood of crash is 0, you don't actually care what the exposure is and what the severity is, because there will be no crashes. And likewise here, and I put a little disclaimer on this one, but if you are able to say when the crashes happen, the severity will be so low that nobody will be killed or seriously injured. They're all going to be like little fender benders and little scrapes and bruises and the like. You don't actually care what the likelihood is and what the severity is, because all of these crashes, people are going to walk away, going to lead normal, healthy lives. Now, the disclaimer is basically if you get a 0 there and a 4 there and a 4 there, you probably want to mention something, because it's just a bad, you're going to have lots of minor crashes. But from a pure safety perspective, we're okay with that. So that's one of the big advantages of putting numbers to it, because if you can put a 0, you eliminate that risk basically, and that's kind of what we're aiming for. With the subjectivity of safety scores, can we still compare different projects with their safety scores? Or is it just supposed to compare different treatments for the same intersection or length of road? Should be the question. Yeah. So the Safe System Assessment Framework was never developed for prioritizing across a program of projects or anything like that, or comparing that intersection with the one. That was never its intention. Okay. Another thing that was debated heavily at the working group, because it said, okay, as soon as we score it, then like people will start comparing and they'll start putting benchmark scores and the like. Now, yes, that started to play out, and we're doing a project at the moment. We're working on a more uniformity of scoring, so that we can do that. But the idea at the moment was that each project, it's like a risk assessment, right? You tend to just do your risk assessment on your project, and you don't compare that against the risk assessment of the others. I mean, you might say, oh, we don't want to see high risk or intolerable risks, but it's not that direct, comparison. You don't order your projects based on your risk assessments. You use them to inform how you make the project better, how you make it safer. And that's kind of the intention always of this safe system assessment. The addition of scoring has made it much more, prioritizing, ordering, and those sort of things. But as I say, this is something that will continue to develop over time. But for the moment, what people are really, if they're using this well, is that they get their existing condition score, they get all their options. They should be saying, we've got to bring our scores down as much as we can. Okay, we've got the existing conditions, great. We're seeing it's better, but can we make it even better than that? And that's really how we want it to be used. But as I say, there's more and more work happening on that as more and more people start to use this. Okay, I'm going to give you a quick break, and then I'm going to take you through a few more things, and then I'm going to give you your assignment. So let's just take 3 minutes so you can have a quick stretch and you can fill up your water or whatever, and we'll get back into it in 3 minutes. Okay, we'll get back to it in a second. Okay, so you're going to fill out your matrix. You're going to put lots of dot points. You're going to do the existing conditions like this one. Don't worry about reading the details here. But you're going to do an existing conditions. What's currently there. You're going to copy that. That one, this one's example one for, okay, we've got this intersection here, the T intersection. You see some photos of the existing conditions, you know, looking at things. It's got lighting, got good line markings, got a bit of footpath, got this old bridge structure here, it's got some guideposts, it's got some power poles, it's got some trees. Factoring all of that in, lots of info. It's on a downhill grade, got all of that. But then you're going to copy that existing conditions matrix and you're going to look at their design. And okay, so they've got one design and they're proposing a roundabout at that location. And you got, this is a nice sort of level of design to do a safe system assessment on, because they've got enough detail to see sort of what they're doing, but it's not so much that like they're not going to change anything. I mean, when you get that, you know, 308 3-page design set with the full design works, they're pretty reluctant to fundamentally change the intersection form. So I want to do this kind of early on. It's nice. They've got that one. They've got this modified T signalized intersection, which they're proposing as another option there. So it's got some pedestrian crossing facilities there and there. Okay, that's good. And then there's the conventional T. Okay, you know, there, and they've got slip lane added, and they've got crossing points sort of here and here. Oh no, there's no crossing there. There's crossing there. But you know, you're taking each one of those. Each one will get its own matrix. You copy the existing conditions. I like to somehow sort of put a symbol so it's easy for them to know which one we're looking at. The roundabout, and then, you know, crossing bits out, adding bits in red. Okay, that bit's gone, that bit's there, it's got a new score. And you keep changing, adjusting, adapting, and you get that for each one of them. And then you get your final scores. You have overarching scores. So here I can see, right, that was the existing conditions score. The roundabout gets 90. Modified T with signals gets 99. Standard T with signals gets 105. So we know they all get better alignment with safe system principles. We know the roundabouts got the highest alignment with safe system principles. There you go. You can put it in a different sort of form with the overarching scores if you want. And then we find ourselves all the way back to what I showed right at the start. Then you can see how it's arrived at these different scores. Then you're providing ideas. So now you might say, oh, well, the roundabout's the best alignment with safe system principles, but it can be better still. And I mean, certainly maybe some things can be done to bring this score down. Maybe some things can be done to bring this score down. Or even some of these ones that are already low, like we can make them even lower. What are the ideas? What could be adjusted? And when you come up with ideas, you need to categorize these ideas into primary or supporting. I'll put a dotted line down here because what we've got down here is things we call non-safe system. It's really only there for terminology. You wouldn't recommend anything that is non-safe system in a safe system assessment. It's there for terminology. So what we do is we say, okay, here are some ideas how you could alter that roundabout, maybe. Other things we can do that will virtually eliminate the potential for fatal and serious injury in association with the foreseeable crash type. So if we're talking about cycling, how can we virtually eliminate cyclist crashes at that roundabout? Now, maybe we are looking at a completely separated cycle facility around the roundabout with raised platforms or the like around, and we go, that's enough to virtually eliminate crashes into the future because, that's enough to virtually eliminate fatal and serious injuries occurring. So there might still be crashes, light bumps and scrapes, but death and serious injury is virtually eliminated for cyclists. Or we might say, well, we reckon that's going to do a really good job. And we're going to reduce the number, but I can't say it's going to virtually eliminate them into the future. But we know it's going to help out. That is then a supporting treatment. Now, some rules of thumb here, real sort of rules of thumb. If you're not addressing the severity of the crash, it's probably a supporting treatment. So supporting treatments tend to be all those likelihood improving ones. Signs, line marking, lighting, sealed shoulders, audio tactile edge line, surface improvements, geometric improvements, adding lanes, removing lanes, moving bus stops here and there. What else is there? Traffic signals, phasing changes. They're all like good road safety things to be doing. But you get all of that right. And we still can't say that the distracted driver or somebody who's half asleep or the like is somebody who falls asleep is not going to be within the death and serious injury category. But if we're able to then do things like place a roadside flexible barrier down there for cars leaving the road, we've virtually eliminated death and serious injury by they can fall asleep, they can be distracted, they can be on their phone, they can leave the road. They hit a flexible barrier system that's well designed. It's virtually eliminated death and serious injury for passenger vehicles. If we get the environment really slow, we have raised platforms, we have wombat crossings in lower speed, got the speeds down, we've got everything, we've virtually eliminated death and serious injury. So your wombat crossings, so your raised pedestrian crossings, your flexible barrier systems, roundabouts at intersections for passenger vehicles, there are sort of generally considered primary for those specific categories. You might say, oh, no, a roundabout can't be a primary because cyclists. Well, you go, yeah, okay, it's not a primary for that crash category, but it's primary for intersection for car category. Now, this can be getting quite confusing, and this is probably an area you're going to struggle a bit. But the Austroads guide, the Austroads Safe System Assessment Framework actually goes through each crash type and points out treatments and categorizes them for you. Primary, they say it's primary, here are, for intersection, here are some primary treatments, here are some supporting treatments. Not all of them, but just some to show you so you can get a feel for this. Here's a question. Is removing filter right turns a supporting treatment? Yes, it is. And that's good. So it reduces the likelihood of crashes, and it's damn effective at reducing the likelihood of crashes. You put that fully controlled right turn, the red arrow, you get wonderful road safety benefits, but you don't eliminate that because we know that the arrow sometimes goes green, they're doing their turn movement, someone runs the red light, and we've got the crash. So don't get sort of confused with that's a good treatment, but it's not eliminating death and serious injury. But you combine that with measures to slow the vehicles that are approaching that may run red lights or the like a raised platform. Now we're in primary territory. Any other sort of questions there? A little bit tricky, that one. I suggest you do have a look at the Safe System Assessment Framework from Austroads on this, have a look at those different crash types and how they categorize them. What we do, then I mentioned there are these other questions. These are qualitative questions. You do not quantify these. You do not put numbers to these, but you do make commentary around these in a full safe system assessment. In order to spare you some time in your assignment, we've not put these in there, and to try to just make it so it's a reasonable exercise. But in a full safe system assessment, you're going to go and you're going to ask these questions of yourself, and you might, chat about them with the project team and the local police and others, depending on what you're doing. But the questions are road users likely to be alert and compliant? And what are some factors that might influence this? What are the expected compliance and enforcement levels, alcohol, drugs, speed, road rules, driving hours? What's the likelihood of driver fatigue? Can enforcement be conducted safely? Are there special road users, so entertainment precincts or elderly children on road activities? Now you're just writing commentary around any of this. As I say, so maybe some for big safe system assessments or the like, you with your client's permission, obviously, you talk to the local highway patrol and you say, tell me about the issues out there, and here's the design for this big upgrade. Think you'll be able to do enforcement under these new changes? And we've seen some pretty nice wins in this space where one that really sticks in my mind is one we were doing in sort of metropolitan or outer metropolitan Melbourne, big duplication job, and $100 million duplication, and sat down with the police, rolled out the sort of general plan that we're assessing, and said, this is what's sort of being planned. Will you be able to conduct enforcement safely? Oh, yeah. They were like, well, not really. I mean, you're putting these continuous barrier systems down here, and it's going to make things a little bit hard. And I don't know what we'd do, how we'd get the booze bus in there. We've always wanted to be able to put the booze bus, but it's never really been good because of this and that. So it'd be amazing if you could sort of create an area, and then there's an old stack site there. And we said, okay, the project team, could we, so we put this in as an idea for consideration, a recommendation. And why don't you work with the police and create a area there that the booze bus could go, and up the road a number plate recognition vehicle bay, so the vehicle could sit in there, do the number plate recognition, and then down the road you've got your booze bus area, and so as thinking that through. And in this $100 million project, it's already a road reserve, and it's a stack site, or it was a stack site, and then they were able to design into that a area for the booze bus, very lovely area from an occupational health and safety for the officers' perspective. They can move vehicles in, and they're protected away from the road. They've got the number plate recognition. It's just beautiful, and it was in the scheme of things, no extra money in the job. I got minuscule, a little bit of extra money in the scheme of the job, but we're now holistically thinking about the safe system. And this whole of system approach. So even though it's an infrastructure project, they're thinking about enforcement. Can enforcement be safely? And it's generated out of these questions. That's just one example of where these have facilitated some alterations to projects. Sometimes it's been things like, education with schools in the area on how to use the new facility. What's the best way to do it? Or working with drinking establishments in the area and understanding how they what they have there to assist patrons in leaving safely and the like. What is the level of alignment with the ideals of safer vehicles? Now, this is really a question that's quite a lot of the time we put not applicable on here, because your road is sort of like, you're just looking at road upgrades. When you do a whole community assessment or you do a mine site assessment, this becomes quite a meaty part of your assessment. But a lot of the time it's not quite there. Sometimes you might factor in your roads, your cars of the future style thinking in here. Other factors that might attract a large number of unsafe vehicles, percentage of heavy vehicles too high, Are there resources to detect non-roadworthy overloaded vehicle? Again, can enforcement of like vehicle features be conducted safely? And has vehicle breakdown been catered for? And post-crash care. Are there issues that might influence safe and efficient post-crash care in the event of a severe injury? So congestion, access, stopping spots, that's kind of usually plays out a little bit in motorways and those sorts of environments. Do medical services operate as efficiently as possible? And this one again, sometimes your remote areas, you're starting to then look at telecommunications, you said phone reception, how long would people be out there before they'd be able to get that? Like we went in New Zealand, up in the mountains, and it was sort of, wow, it's really hard to get to injured parties, injured motorcyclists especially, and there's nowhere for the helicopter to land because it's all too, and so discussion then is on the table about helicopter landing pads as part of road infrastructure upgrades, and we're broadly now thinking about a holistic safe system. Are other road users and emergency response teams protected during a crash event? Are drivers provided correct information about this incident? Is there information available via radio or VMSs or the like? Is there provision for e-safety, future safety technology, future systems, cooperative ITS, so cooperative intelligent transport systems, communication of the future? Like, these are just open questions to get you thinking, to start you adding ideas in and making suggestions to the projects. They're trying to cover amazing rafts of scenarios. So don't feel too bad when you're doing these if you're not putting a lot of information in here. You're saying, can't think of anything for this particular project, but at least somebody's doing this holistic, rounded thinking about all these projects. So we're at a point now where we've done a matrix for the existing conditions. We've done matrices for each of the designs that you've got. We've got scores. We've come up with some recommendations based on, this thinking that we're doing with all these questions, what we've seen in the matrix. We're categorizing those into primary and supporting, and we're getting a nice rounded assessment and some assistance to the project team. And we're putting together a report. And the report sort of has now developed to a standard format. And what we've done is we've put a report from the Victorian government in here and into your memory stick on Schoology, which is a template report that they say, hey, well, let's everybody use this so we're all consistent with how we're reporting. We put an example report in your memory stick as well, so you can see a full one that's been done. We've put the full Word template for the report, and you can use that for your own ones. Put your own branding on it, do whatever you want. Let's just make sure we have these consistent headings and sections, and you will follow that. And so we're talking about, what type of assessment is happening, a full or a rapid, and I have not even told you the difference. That's next module. Don't worry about that for now. Members of the team, list of the meetings, description of the process, project background, context of the project using the prompt questions out of Osprey's, the matrices for all of the options that you've got, commentary on other safe system elements. So there are those questions we just went through, those questions about road users, post-crash care and all of that. And then proposed changes or suggestions and categorizing those. That's what we want to see. And so we're at the point now where I'm going to take you through the assignment. I will pause for any questions. And this is, what you'll be working on now over the next week or two. But I do want to give you a little safety brief. So what you're going to do is get a specific site for you. And it'll be close to your home or close to your office or whatever address you gave us. We've either found an existing road upgrade that's happening in your area, or we have had our designers whip up something in your area quickly. And you are going to go out to that site and you're going to have a look at the existing conditions. You're going to have a look at your design. You're going to imagine how it ties in and connects with the existing road and the changes that are going to happen. But it's going to help you then do a fairly close to real safe system assessment. It's a mock safe system assessment, but you are going to go to the site, right? Now, the sites have been chosen and we've looked at them and we've risk assessed them, so they can all be done like extremely safe. They're all extremely safe, as long as you act appropriate. We want you to wear your high-vis vest. That's a must. We want you to stay off the road. We don't need you out there measuring lane widths, you know, putting your head down to look at the camber of the road and these sorts of things. You're out there to get a general feel for how it operates and, you know, what road users are there and, you know, where drainage is and what the grades are and these sorts of, how steep is and these sorts of things. Not like how steep is it, I put the electronic level out to get the exact, but you know, it's that sort of stuff. More of the stuff that you just can't pick up off the street, right? You need to be out there, you need to feel it. Now, we might have some COVID challenges in terms of seeing it in its real operating form and also your ability to travel and those sorts of things. We'll work through those with you one-on-one depending on your circumstances. I mean, this is an education, it's sort of categorized in those education where you're allowed to do some activities and the like. And of course, you'll be COVID safe doing everything you're doing out there. And it may be hopefully within walking distance or very close that you can have a look at it. But, you know, the world is an odd place at the moment. So we're going to need to be a little bit adapting in how we go about these things. So let's chat about that if you've got particular concerns there. But don't be a hazard yourself. Don't make people have to walk onto the road to get around you. Don't park in that really bad spot that makes the cyclist have to go into the running lane or blocks people off. And there is a SWMS, a safe work method statement, which is in Moodle, and you're going to have to fill out just a little tick to say, yes, I have read this and I agree to act safely. I won't go out there when I'm intoxicated. I acknowledge that I have a responsibility as well. And you know, just general good, normal stuff. So there is a site safety thing in Moodle for you to have a look at as well. But that's my little briefing to you. I know a lot of you work very much in this space and are out on site a lot, so you do it very safely. I'm just reading a question here. Can we use existing intersection roundabout have deficiencies which can be modified and get more safe? I'm not 100% sure I understand that, but for your assignment, I'm going to talk you through exactly what you've got to do now. Okay, so hopefully that'll answer it. We'll have the ability to ask lots of questions as we go. Okay, I'm going to bring up the assignment. Sorry, just got to get out of my PowerPoint now. Hit those changes. Here we go. Share screen number 2. Right, you're in Moodle. Hopefully you're seeing my screen here. You're in Moodle. We've just finished module 4. You're going to do the quiz for module 4. And I think actually that quiz might be just, oh no, there is a quiz for this one. Then module 5 is the actual safe system assessment, right? So it's its own entity. So module 5, and you'll see there's your safe work method statement. So that's just telling you how to operate safely. It's stuff that you'll just go, yep, I know not to go out there drunk and those sorts of things, but that's, you know. Then there's this little, okay, you open that up, you agree, I'm going to be safe when I'm out And then you click on here, module 5. And what you'll see here is a whole lot of site designs, right? And your name will be on one of these. You can see, so maybe you're seeing your name there. All right, so I'm just going to randomly click on one. Here we'll go. Let's have a look at this one. So we click on that, and this is your design. All right, and there it is. Okay, so they're taking this, what looks like an unsignalized intersection, and it looks to be the plan is to signalize the intersection. All right. And, you know, it's a very high level conceptual idea, but you've got here some information about traffic volumes, cyclist volumes, pedestrian volumes, unknown motorcycle volumes. That, okay, is what you use. If you go, I know this intersection and I absolutely know that that's wrong, but these have been sort of fabricated for the purposes of the assignment. If you absolutely want to use another number, you just clearly write in the scope of your assessment that you've used another number for this reason. But that's to help anybody who just goes, oh, well, I just want to do it. So that's what you've got. And you go, great, okay, I've got that. And you go, oh, yep, I know where Moonlight Terrace and Hume Drive is. Yep, I know the intersection, I know where it is. And maybe you live in that house or something. So you go, that's beautiful. Don't have to go far. And then up here you see assignment, safe system assessment template, Word document. Right, okay, this is where I'm going to put my information. So you open up your Word document. Let's bring it over here. Okay, and you'll see here that we're using the Victorian Government template for a rapid safe system assessment. And I'll stamp this on the front. Only need to update the highlighted section. Trying to keep this streamlined, keep it easy for you. So let's have a look what's highlighted. Only highlighted sections. Okay, reminder there. So in a real one, you do an executive summary, you do nice bits of information. I don't want that. I don't want you wasting your time writing long-winded executive summaries. I don't want you updating the table of contents. I don't want you updating the tables of figures and all of this sort of stuff. I do want your name. I want you to put your name in there. And if you are doing this with others, and we're okay if you do it as a team, if you have the same site, I'm okay with it. You must put in all of the names of the assessment team in each of your safe system assessments. Right? If I happen to find a safe system assessment that has one person's name, and then I find another one that's got one person's name and they're exactly the same, they're not saying that it was a team effort, that I'm not going to be happy with that. So I'll address questions in a second. I'll just finish doing this. I see there's a question. So your name in there, if you're doing it by yourself, if you're doing it as a team, put a few names in. Don't need the project background. In fact, this is probably, you can see why it's a mock safe system. So you'd want to get a whole lot more information and background about these projects. Like you'd want to dig it, why are you doing it? Well, what's the land use planning? Why is it happening? What are this, you got this, you've got in traffic modeling. No, okay. For an assignment, we just want you to show us that you understand the process and what's happening. Proposed work. This, though, is where you put a little bit of information about, you're looking at the design, you go, for the one we just looked at. It's an existing giveaway, they're making it into a set of traffic signals, and you could put a snip of that design in there, just so it's easy for the marker to go, yep, okay, I know what that project is, right, and I know what it is. And if this is also, so you've said, this is what I've assessed. So a summary of your assessment, you're going to do this after you've actually done the assessment. You're going to come back to this and you're going to put the score for the existing conditions and the score for the design option. You've got one design option only. You're going to create a graph. So you're going to use Excel and you're going to create your own graph like this. I might pop in there a little graph generator tool that we've done. Just, I mean, pretty simple stuff in Excel, but it just generates your graph of your scores. But you're going to have existing conditions and you're only going to have one bar next to that, which will be the design that you've been given. And you're going to fill out the matrix. And you're going to fill out the existing conditions. You're going to fill out all of this. Fill out lots of factors that increase, factors that decrease, ... put scores in. Once you're happy with that, you're going to copy that. You're going to paste it, and you're going to create a design matrix. And then you're going to cross things out. You're going to use that strike through. You know, you go, oh, I put in this thing here, and then, you know, for the new one, you've copied it, you strike that out with the strike through. No, that's not going to be there, but you know, this one, this one's new, so I'm going to make it red. And so you're going to, this is for the design, you're going to modify your matrix like that. Then you're going to come down here and you're going to put some treatments in the primary. So this is the design. What could they add to the design to make it better, right? So you looked at their design. They go, oh, okay, they're going to do traffic signals. So that you don't make any mention of the traffic signals per se, but you say what they could do better here is separated bike facility, or, you know, create a shared path, or raise the intersection, or they could, you know, do fully controlled right turns, or the like. Huh? I don't want you re-explaining what they're planning to do in here. No, this is above and beyond their design, additions to their design, improvements to their design. That's what this is all about. You don't put anything in project response. You leave that blank. So you just put ideas in here. Add rows, you know, give me a few things in each of these. This would be great. And the last thing we want you to do is provide a photo of yourself at the site to prove to us that you actually went there. You know, you can take a selfie, you can set your phone up with the timer and, you know, show you were there in your high-vis vest, but show us you actually went to the site. That's the only photo we want. I don't want hundreds of site photos, right? We know the sites, we know it's there. All right, just give us that photo of you on the site in your high-vis vest, being safe. That is your task. So you'll finish that, you'll save it, you'll upload it back to Moodle, and we will then mark it. And once you've done that, completed it, we've got one more module, a little bit more, but they basically, you'll be done the course. You'll have shown that you understand the process, you've got the basics of it, you understand exposure, likelihood, severity, you can generally sort of understand safe system principles, and you'll go out and then you'll just do more and more and get better at them and keep practicing them and do more and more, and it'll be great. Questions, comments. So I think the first question, the question that came in there, so Wayne's asking, so he was involved in the original design. So let me just have a quick look at that one. Yeah. Oh no, that's a different one. So it doesn't, like, we want a level of independence in a safe system assessment. For this exercise, it probably doesn't matter a lot. But safe system assessments are less rigid on independence than road safety audits. In fact, sometimes we have project team members within the assessment team. The team leader of it is traditionally independent from the project. But in order to prove to us your competency and understanding of the process and categorizing things and thinking about it, I'm okay if you have had some involvement in these projects. Okay, it'll actually give you some advantage in terms of using this new way to look at existing projects. So I think that that's okay. If you have an issue with your site, can it be changed? Yes, it can be changed. You just need to get in contact with us. By issue, though, like we're talking, we've given you one in that's 3 hours from, or an hour from your house or something like that. You know, like those are issues. If you look at it and you go, no, I don't like this design, you're just going to assess that, right? Yeah. So yes, if it's a practical issue in being able to do it or the like, we can change it. And if you really go, no, this is my project I've been working on forever and I'm way too close to it to be able to do this, we're happy to find you another site. Yeah, okay. So, practical realities of being able to get there, just let us know. We'll find you something much closer. Tell us your parameters and the like, and I've got a design team ready to help out. Most of them, I think you'll find it, and some of them are real live projects, which is great, and I like to use those where we can and we have them easily available. Sometimes we're fabricating something that's generally in a sort of conceptual realm of something that could happen in the future or the like. But remember, this is a course assignment. So we're just trying for you to prove your competency and understanding of the process. These are exposure things, these are likelihood things, these are severity things, these are how you score, this is how you multiply, this is how you add to get a final score and produce a graph and give your recommendations and categorize those recommendations right. Your score is predominantly going to be driven by getting correct process, right? There may be a little bit of commentary around, not sure about that recommendation because of these sort of things. That's not going to drag your score significantly down in terms of sort of opinion on little bits of road safety bit, as long as you're getting things right in terms of where they go and how they're presented and where they fit in. You'll get some feedback from your assignment 1 if you haven't got that already, which will help you understand a few things, and you'll go from there. We've got what's another questions coming in there? I have done a safe system assessment report last year for a project. Is it possible to consider this project, or do I have to complete the assignment? Yep, sorry, you have to complete the assignment, the one we've given you. That's sorry. We need to do it on the one that we've set. It helped. Yes, I mean, yeah, that's part of our sort of operating of the course. But happy to chat to you more about that at some point later on. Also, I think that you've probably picked up ways to do things that are slightly different to maybe ways that people would have interpreted how to do these things themselves. And we're trying to get that consistency across the board. Now, there is some work involved in this, but it's not days of work. Okay, you can do this fairly quickly. We've tried to streamline it to just enough to show us you understand the process and competencies and the like. You've got the designs. Time-consuming elements will be getting out, having a look at the site, getting a feel for it, and the like, and then filling out your matrices. Writing, elaborate 5-page bits and pieces about the background of the intersection and the like, we don't want that. I mean, they're just wasting your time. You're wasting my time to have to read it because that's not going to alter your mark. your marker is going to be driven on just those key elements. Any questions? Any further questions on the task at hand? Probably a good question is, when's it due? And you've got a couple of weeks on this one. It says 24th of September. I do suggest you get onto it pretty quick. So you've got 2 weeks on that. But I suggest you get onto it quick, knock it off. And especially because we've got another module in a week's time where you can ask some questions. I've allocated a good amount of time in that module for you to say, okay, I've gone out to the site, I've come up with this scenario, I don't know whether it's exposure or likelihood, you can talk that through. Or I've been trying to fill out the matrix, I don't understand which bit goes where, or this report does, I don't understand this section of the report. They're great, because if you're having those issues, others are probably having those issues, and we can talk those through and I can explain it live. Rough time spent on the assignment is a question that's come in. I reckon it's probably 1 to 2 hours. And now, well, it depends, with a little bit of travel added into that, I reckon, depending on how close your site is. But being on the site, as I say, probably, 10 minutes on the site to get a feel for it, look around, maybe walk around the site, have a look at bits and pieces. That's enough for that. And just get in and start pounding out those existing conditions, things that you've identified, copy that, paste it, modify it by looking at the designs, a little bit of filling out, Excel, there's a graph, an hour and a half to 2 hours. I think you should be able to wrap that up pretty well. Now, if you get there and you just go, I've got no idea what I'm doing here, right, get in contact with me. We'll have a one-on-one chat. We'll have a look at your site. We'll have we'll look at the design. We'll talk it through. We'll talk through the matrix again, one-on-one. All right, remember, if you don't get your 80% competency mark, I fail as well, right? And I'm not going to let that happen. So I'm going to bring you up to that competency level. Any other questions about your task? Now, I know you're all busy. You got a lot of work on. It's hectic. It's chaotic. Try to schedule a little bit of this in. Get the ball rolling on it. As I say, it's like a lot of things. You just getting started is the hardest thing. Once you're up and running, you'll knock it off. My site is currently, so there's a question. My site is a current construction site, and the existing conditions have been modified. Can you continue based on your knowledge of the intersection? Yes. Now, I apologize for that, but that may be the case for some people. You'll get some things like that. Please use your existing knowledge. You still go there and have a look at some other areas that maybe aren't blocked off or the like, to look at how it might play out, or try to get a feel for things, or show us. And in reality, actually, that's quite common in a safe system assessment. These weird little things happen. There's it started construction already, but they're trying to do the safe system assessment still, so you mightn't get that. But you can use a bit of your local knowledge, a bit of street view, a bit of things you've seen on site, and piece something together. But feel free to, if you've got any little bits and pieces of issues like that pop up, shoot an email through to myself or Emma or both, and we'll respond, and we'll put you on the right track. But enjoy it. It's fun. I love safe system assessing, looking at design, imagining how it's going to play out, scoring, ideas. Here's how we can improve things. My site is down the southern end of the LGA, and traffic is impacted by the border closure. So I'll need a different site. Well, shoot us an email. I mean, if you can still get there and it's just that you won't see it with its full traffic as normal, I'm probably okay with that, using some existing knowledge you have and the like. But if you can't cross a border or something like that, of course, we completely understand. We have to get you another site. And of course, if your restrictions are really strong-handed at the moment, level, level 200 with, all the alarms and bells going off, of course, we're not going to be sending you out to a site. We get in contact and we'll give you another protocol to follow to prove your competency as best we possibly can. Thanks, everybody. Wonderful session again, yeah, really into the meat of those safe system assessments. Let's get out there and do our safe system assessments. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your Friday afternoon. See you next week, next Friday. Got a bit of time off now. Use that time to do your assessment. Bye.